Similarly, we see the current federal government seeking to introduce laws that will effectively censor the internet. Of course, we all want to stop unlawful material being viewed on the internet. There are appropriate protections that are in place for that. But I have personal responsibility as a parent. If I want to stop my children from viewing other material that I feel is inappropriate, then that is my responsibility as a parent to do something about it, not that of the government. And this was the view of the Howard government, which proposed PC-based internet filters, a policy which I have always strongly supported. What we have in the government's internet filtering proposals is a scheme that is unworkable in practice. But more perniciously, it is a scheme that will create the infrastructure for government censorship on a broader scale. Protecting liberty is about protecting freedoms against both known and future threats. Some may argue that we can surely trust a democratically elected government in Australia to never try to introduce more widespread censorship. I'm not so sure. We would all like to think that liberty in Australia does not need defending. However, warning bells must surely have started clanging when the South Australian Labor government sought, in a ham-fisted and ultimately unsuccessful way recently, to actually censor political bloggers on the internet in the lead up to their current election. Perhaps such proposals for wanting back liberty are not surprising from a Labor Party that argues for an ever-expanding role for government in the affair of our nations and our personal lives. I don't mean to suggest that there is no room for government intervention and regulation. There is probably a legitimate debate to be had about the controls, for example, via the classification system placed on extremely violent video games. I heard a compelling interview on ABC Radio recently on this subject. Dr. Wayne Warburton, a psychologist at Macquarie University, was explaining how repeated exposure to violent games can influence the behaviour of their users. In contrast to watching a violent movie on the odd occasion, spending hours embedded in a game, actually pulling the trigger and killing virtual people that are now so realistic that fantasy and reality have merged, and it can rewire our brains. What concerns me about these games is that they, at the most benign end, make us immune to violence, or worse still, encourage us to think of violence as a legitimate tool. Fundamentally, the loss of respect for human life and dignity that these games encourage becomes a threat to the respect we have for individual liberty.